Welcome back to another tutorial. Thank you for staying tuned for my returning subscribers and for my new subscribers. I hope you learned something new today. Do like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you once again. Today we are going to be making an umbrella gown with collar like this. So I'll be using 3 yards of fabric. I'm using 3 yards because the length of my gown is for a client is actually 43 inches. Or if you're using something short, you're using a shorter length, you can actually use 2.5 yards, like so. So I'm going to be folding the fabric like this. Make sure the two edges join together like this. Then you take the other side and form a triangle like the way I'm going to fold it in this fabric. I'm using a Kampala material for this umbrella gown. At the end of the day, the gown was looking like it was really standing, like it was so firm compared to other materials like Ankara or a softer fabric, that the flare are going to be so relaxed, but mine was standing. It's because of the nature of the fabric. So don't be surprised when you're using something similar like this. That's why I'm just pointing this out. So you fold the fabric like so. Make sure it gets to the edge of the other part like this. You can actually reduce the flare at this point if you want. If you don't want it to be too flare, you can reduce it. But everything depends on the length of your gown. Mine is 43, so I have to go all the way to the side. I can still reduce the flare if I want to, but I will just take the sides inside when I'm sewing as the sewing allowance. As you can see, once I folded, the other part was not up to the length that I wanted, so I will be joining at that part. So I'm letting the folded part to face me. That will be the center front and the center back together, so that I can take my measurements. So I'll be joining at that part so that I can get my full length of the gown. So here I'm taking the shoulder measurement. The shoulder of this client is actually 14 inches, so divided by 2, that will be 7. So I'll add ½ inch, that'll be 7.5. From at that point, I'll mark my full length of the gown. Once you're marking the full length of the gown and you see that the other sides are not equal, I have no choice but to join another fabric to make sure that the full length is achieved. So this is what I'm doing, marking the full length of the gown round. But for me, the full length was not up to the other two sides, so I'm going to be joining at that part. So I'm cutting out the excesses. So this me marking the armhole length position so that I can get my bust measurement. So for this client, I'm using 7 inches. So at that point, I'm marking my bust measurement. Our bust is 37 divided by 4. The value you get, add 1 inch for ease, then add another 1 inch for sewing allowance. So you connect your armhole. Sorry, I'm using my free hand. I'm using a free hand for this gown. If you want to use the pattern, feel free to do that, but make sure you mark all your positions at the right places. and the slope of the shoulder. So you cut out the armhole too. If you do not want it to be too flare, you can actually reduce from that position, from the side seam or the side, both side seams, the front and back. You can reduce from that position. So I went ahead to go and join the places that were not up to the full length of the gown. So from there, I measured the full length of the gown after joining. They mark the full length position, then I cut out the excesses. So this is what I did in this place here. So I'm marking the neck depth for both front and back. For the back, the neck depth is 1 inch. Then the center front to the shoulder line is 3 inches. I'm using 3 inches for both front and back. But for the depth of the neck for the back is 1 inch. But for the front is 3 inches by 3 inches. So I'm going to be adding collar to this umbrella gown. So I'll cut the back first before I cut the front. So I'll cut the front. I'm making a placket position where I'll be placing the button. So the length of that is actually 5.5 inches. You can use 5.5 to 6 inches. So now to show you how I actually did my placket for button stand, because I'm adding collar to this umbrella gown, so there won't be any facing or lining. So you're going to cut 2 stripes for both, so that you use to seal both edges of the opening, like so. Then you're going to cut out a 2.5 inch button stand where the button would be placed, like this. So this is me showing you one method of how to sew your plackets. There are different methods of sewing plackets, but this is a very simpler method. So all you do is to use your 1 inch sand, right side facing right side, then you stitch. Once you've done that for both sides, make sure you press your stitches at this point. Every stitch you make sure you press it. So you are going to fold, you are going to notch the middle so that you can easily fold the part that you stitched inside properly. Then you fold it, leaving 1/4 of an inch fold, like this, just like how I'm doing in the video. You want to pin it down so that it will stay in place. And the other side, this is where the button is going to be placed. So this one, you're going to fold it completely inside and fold it inside like so. Let it relax, leaving nothing out. I'm using a candle for this material. The Kampala material was very stiff, or it was rigid. It was causing friction with the presser foot, so I had to use candle so that it would have a easy run through on the fabric. The candle was really helpful. Stitch the other side. this is where you're going to get an opening like this. So you're going to take your 2.5 inch placket. You have to stay it, make sure it's firm. Then you fold it like so, taking 1/4 of an inch at both sides. Then you seal one end of the material. You open it out. So at the quarter, at the edges of those places that you folded, you have to seal it like so. So your button stand is ready. So you position it properly. This will be in between the edges of both opening. So that's where your button will be placed. Like so. Make sure you pin it down so that it won't shift while you are stitching. So you're going to stitch it at this side. Pin it down so that it won't shift while stitching. There are various methods by which you can actually fix your plackets, but this is one method. I hope you understand at this point. Once you get to this point, you lift your presser foot and you pin down the needle. Then you shift your fabric, or you move your fabric to the other side so that you can actually stitch both openings together. So that place will not be opening. Just stitch it together or join it together with the stitch line. Your button stand and your placket is ready. You trim out the excesses. So I'll be fixing a collar on this umbrella gown. So I have to join the front, I have to join the back to this gown, taking 1/2 inch at both sides. So once you are done, you take the measurement of your neckline. This is what you're going to use to draft your collar. So on the paper, at the edge, you take 1.5 centimeter, like so. You connect the lines together. So from that position, you mark 5 centimeter upward. Mark 5 centimeter and take it along horizontally like that. This is another method of drafting collar. There are different methods of drafting collar, but this is a simple method. I'm just making a simple collar for this gown. Now on that horizontal line, mark half of your neck measurement. The neck measurement that you took, divided by 2, then you mark it at both lines. Half of your neck measurement that you took on your gown. You connect the lines together. And you take 1 centimeter from the top there. This is just for the extension, that pointed part of the collar. So I'm giving it 1 centimeter. Then you connect back to the line at the bottom. So for the edge where it's going to be joining the neckline, that part, just make a slant or a really slight curvy line rather, to join at the ends of that. And make sure you measure you measure this edge, measure this new position or this new line, and make sure it's actually half of your neck measurement. This is because the neckline is not straight, so it's actually curvy. That's the main reason for this. So this is me measuring it, making sure that it's actually half of the neck measurement on the gown. Once you are cutting it on your fabric, make sure you add your allowance. I added 1/4 allowance on the fabric. And I cut them in folds, both the lining and the main collar. So I stayed one part, as you can see, and I marked the lines that I'm going to be stitching. That's the same line, the part joining the gown and the outer part of the collar, and those are the stitches line. So I'm just going to follow that line. Those are the same lines that I'm going to be following while stitching. The rope I'm adding here is actually for me to be able to pull the pointy part out, but it didn't work for me, so it's not really necessary. You can actually skip that part. So open it through and make sure you press your stitches to make sure it lays properly. So I've done that. Now I'm going to join the collar to the gown at the neckline. Now the method I'm going to use to join the collar to the gown is different because this gown does not have any facing or lining. So I'm going to be joining the collar directly on the gown, and I will end up covering the stitch line with another fabric. So make sure you notch the middle of both the collar and also on the gown at the center back. Then you join that part directly. I'll stitch it through to the neckline at both sides like so. You will see this, you would have seen this method, or you have seen this type of collar stitching on polo shirts, on some shirts that do not have facing too, and some tops that do not have facing. So this is one method of joining collar to your gown or your tops or shirts. So notch the stitch line so that it can actually lay properly. So you cut a stripe, like 1 inch stripe, to cover up the stitch line like this. Cover up the stitch line. So what you're going to do is, at that edge of the joining of the gown to the collar, you place this stripe there and stitch on that line just to cover the stitch line. Cut out the excess and fold. So at this part, you can end up trimming the excesses. If you are folding and you feel like it's going to be too bulky, you can trim the excess. You can take like 1/4 of an inch out, or 1/2 inch if you want to, so that it will make the folding easier for you. So I'm trimming the excess that I want. So you fold it like this. and your stitch line or your seam line is neatly covered. So you're going to stitch this place very carefully, because you know that place is going to be a little bit thick or curvy or bulky. So you stitch this place very carefully, and when you are stitching, make sure you check underneath your fabric to make sure some fabric are not folding in between. So you stitch this place very patiently. Check underneath your fabric to make sure that some fabrics are not folding underneath. Make sure you press your stitches. So I'm cutting, this is just a brief illustration of how I cut the sleeve. Make sure you mark your 1-inch seam allowance for the folding at the edge. Then from that point, mark the full length of the sleeve. So I'll be using 10 inches for the full length of the sleeve, and make sure you add your seam allowance 1/2 inch for sewing. I'm making a slope. Like I said, I didn't use pattern for this. I'm just using my free hand to take the measurements of this gown. So I'm making the curved line for the sleeve, for the sleeve, for the armhole rather. This is the curved line for the armhole. I'll make sure this curved line is actually the full length of your armhole. For some people, their armhole can be 20, 18, 19, depends. So and you measure, make sure that it's actually the full length of your armhole, round armhole, after joining your front and back together and adding your allowance to it. And you take the biceps. See, this sleeve line is going to stop at the biceps. Take the round biceps, then you add your allowance. Your sleeve is ready. So this is me just measuring the sleeve length, the shoulder length rather. I'm marking it for stitching and making sure that it's actually the shoulder measurement. You join the front and back together. Sorry, my machine was kind of faulty here, so I won't be showing how I stitch this. And your gown is ready. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something new today. Till next time.